All right, 4 o'clock. Welcome to the webinar, Introduction to Wealth Management Theory and Practice, also known as Yale CPWA online program. My name is Fiona Bi, and I'm the Senior Account Manager at Yale Executive Education. To everyone on the line, we at Yale Executive Education hope that you and your families are doing well. There's a lot happening in the world right now, and we know with the global health crisis comes complexity, uncertainty, and the shifting of priorities. This is our second online financial certification program, and we model it after our successful SEMA online program, Investment Management Theory and Practice. Our program director, Jim Dobbs, was instrumental in creating both programs, so he knows them forwards and backwards, inside and out. In our webinar this afternoon, we encourage you to listen and engage. If you have questions, please post them. This is your time to get your questions answered. Jim is very knowledgeable, and this is your opportunity to pick his brain. To ask questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can submit your question to everyone or just to me. I suggest you send to everyone. They might have a similar question in mind. Another option is a chat button. Typically, we prefer you use a Q&A for questions directed towards the speaker and chat for technical questions you would like assistance on. Now to introduce our program director. Jim Dobbs is a CPWA certified. He's also CFP and SEMA certified. He was a financial advisor himself for 25 years and ran his own RIA practice before retiring from it to work full-time in his financial education company. Jim has worked with the different certifying bodies at universities for the last 17 years, helping build and manage financial certification programs. More importantly, though Jim has had extensive experience with the Investment and Wealth Institute, formerly IMCA. He personally helped create the CPWA certification and has served the IWI in many roles, including as a chair of IWI's Technical Advisory Board. Jim directed and taught in the classroom version of this CPWA course for many years and has now partnered with us, Yale, to bring this his expertise and enthusiasm to Yale and in turn to you. You will see he's a passionate guy. He's committed to success and he measures his success based on yours. Let's welcome Jim Dobbs.
Well, thank you, Fiona. Can you see and hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, welcome everyone to this. It's really just meant to be an informational, webinar for you guys to kind of talk a little bit about CPWA certification, what it is, what it isn't, maybe even compare it to some others if you're confused between, like CPWA and CFP or whatever. Give you guys a chance to answer your questions, and then we'll spend most of the time actually talking about the process of becoming CPWA certified and what that will look like for you if you choose Yale to help you through that process. Look, I hope you choose Yale. Fiona hopes you choose Yale, but if it's not a good fit, I think you'll better understand the logistics, the structure from this video or this webinar. And I think that will help you. Your intuition by the end of this should tell you whether this is probably a good fit structurally or not. So that's really kind of the intent. We're going to talk about CPWA certification, kind of big picture like I talked about. We'll talk about the program goals and objectives. I think it's really important before you embark on this journey to kind of know what you're getting into, right? So what does the learning institution, what are they trying to help you accomplish as you move through? The money is one thing. This is not cheap, it's not expensive, it's kind of in the middle, but in terms of all the other certifications out there in continuing education, but it's really, I think, as much or more your time, your energy, your opportunity cost. So I really want you to be firm on what we're trying to help you accomplish. Then we'll get into the weeds, talk about structure, the detail, the online course and platform and learning tools and resources. I expect some of you have never done an online learning program or been on a learning management system. Some people call that an LMS before. So I kind of want to walk you through that so you'll be comfortable with what you would be experiencing. And all of this, of course, is just to help you get enough information so you can answer that question there at the bottom, which is, look, is CPWA right for you? And is the Yale CPWA online program the right fit for you as you move towards certification? Fiona will stop me and I'll stop to see if there are questions along the way. She was right in the intro. Hey, look, this is for you. So you guys ask, there are no silly or stupid questions. Just ask them all and she'll tee those up for me. Now, just a heads up, some of the questions you might ask in the little chat forum there, she may know I'm coming to that in a few slides. So she may not ask that if she knows I'm coming to it. But again, don't hesitate. Go ahead and ask those questions. Now is the time. All right, let's talk a little bit about the core topics list. By the way, there is a longer version, a kind of a color-coded PDF version we have of that. You can find it on our website. You can find it in IWI's website if you kind of dig around. But if it's easier just to send me an email, I'm happy to shoot you a copy of the 5 or 6 pager that has all the line by line items. I think this is really important as you kind of eyeball the main sectors or segments of the content and then the kind of key sub content areas underneath each one of those. I think going through the longer version of that, if you're like on the fence, I'm not sure if CPWA is right for me or not. It sounds good. I've heard good things about it, but I'm just not sure if this is right or if something else would suit me better in my practice right now. I think going through the long version is really, really helpful. Just spend 10 minutes on that, literally going through every single line item, just asking yourself, if I know more about this, is this going to help me in my practice? Am I going to be able to serve my clients better? Am I going to be able to attract new clients more effectively? And just keep asking yourself that as you plow through the line after line. I think, again, if you do that for, with consciousness for 10 minutes, I think your gut will tell you largely whether the content of this certification is going to be a good fit for you or not. And again, if you need the PDF, just shoot me an email after we finish up here. I'll be happy to send that over to you this afternoon. All right, let's talk a little bit about a couple more slides, a couple more thoughts on CPWA certification, how it's a little different. As I think most of you know, maybe all of you know, CPWA is for those of you working with high net worth clients. And I'm going to call that, without getting too cute about the range, $5–10 million clients and up, not investable assets per se, but their net worth. So if you're dealing with families or clients that are worth $5–10 million and up, this is what this program is designed for, versus CFP, which is really a mile wide. And it's not super deep in all areas. It is deep in some areas. It depends on the program you go through as well, because there are like 256 different programs for that one. And so that will really impact, how deeply you go and how more test specific it is than not. So that's a great one, and I hold that one as well. But that's really for all financial advisors and planners dealing with people who literally have no money and are in debt to people that are wealthy. But it doesn't focus or specialize in helping you with those clients who are wealthy. This one does. This is what this was created for. I was on the original committee, as I think Fiona mentioned, and I think all but one of us, or maybe even all of us, we're all CFPs. This is now coming up on 17 years ago or something. And the idea was, well, where's the education? Where's the training? Where are the resources for those of us who now our practices have grown and our clients have gotten more successful, and we serve a different kind of clientele than we did in the early days. So here's a great, as I've been rambling on here, you've been able to probably read this a little bit. Kind of, I want you to focus on the blue or the dark bar and the gold or light bar. In the blue, it's which of these does your advisor provide for you currently? So you would expect investments to be way up there. I'm actually kind of surprised it wasn't even a little higher. The yellow, though, is what's really of most importance to you. Now, this is from IWI's study. I think they did this with Cerulli. You can go onto their website and look at the whole the whole research study findings. But this one's really cool to me because as you slide to the right, you see, wow, there is a huge disparity between what high net worth families or individuals say is important to them. Look at that, small business consulting, small business help, guidance, review. You know, how can you help me as I move towards monetizing my business? Can you help me after that? Can you work with my CPA and attorney as I navigate waters I've never seen before? 61% said it was important, but only 12% of them said their advisors are providing this service. So I think in some of these areas, you can see, wow, you got a huge opportunity to jump in there where other advisors, they've got the opportunity too, they've got the opening, but they are not taking advantage of that. So think of programs like CPWA for the executive client, the high net worth, closely held business owner client. I mean, you really got an opportunity to shine here. I won't spend too much time on this one, but I think a couple of things that jump out at me, having worked with CPWA candidates from the get-go many, many years ago. Yeah, I mean, number one, certainly it's going to help you differentiate yourself from a very crowded marketplace, especially those advisors chasing or so-called specializing in the high net worth client set. So you're certainly not just having a certificate from Yale, not just having a certification certificate from IWI for the CPWA certification, but it's the school, it's the skills, the tools, the knowledge you're going to pick up that's going to help you differentiate. Higher compensation, there's a whole study, I think it's IT group, that IWI and others commission, CFP board, to kind of look at certifications and who those people are that hold them and what makes them different, including compensation. So there's some pretty cool stuff there you may want to check out, especially if you're still trying to convince your employer to pay for it. So I think that would probably add to your cause there. The number 3 there, bottom right-hand side, I think that's the one that jumps out to me when I work with the candidates and then see them after and talk with them after. Look, it's just the amount of confidence, not just with their clients, just all much more they know about retirement distribution, taxation, tax ramifications of small business entities and distribution of those entities, taxation, legal issues, asset protection, estate planning, charitable. I mean, they have a ton more confidence with their clients, but I'll go you one step further. I think it depends on who you are and what your network is and who your clients are. But I think you're going to be able to go into those family meetings with your clients' attorneys and CPAs with much more confidence now after going through a curriculum like this. You're going to know a whole lot more now that the absolute specialists in that area should still know a lot more than you, but you're going to be able to, I really think just in like 6 months, we'll talk about timing in a minute, you're going to know more than most tax CPAs and attorneys out there if they don't do this every day. So I think that's just a tremendous help and a lot of value you can add to the client relationships as you try to be, I hope, the quarterback or the leader of the financial team. Oh, let me give you a disclaimer though. Now, we're not trying to teach you to be tax specialists or attorneys or have the knowledge of an attorney in a program like this, but it really doesn't take but tens or dozens of hours in each of these areas to get you so far up that curve that you can make that difference. All right, program goals and objectives, as I mentioned, really important that you know what we're trying to help you accomplish. The first one's probably the most obvious. That's just to really give you, remember that core topics list I talked about a couple of slides ago. IWI calls that their core body of knowledge, or CBOC, if you hear me refer to that. We want to give you comprehensive coverage in all of those 551 topics. That's a lot, and it's not all tested. We'll talk about test prep in a little bit, but we do want to give you really thorough coverage, and that's from readings to summaries to lectures to practice questions, and we'll talk more about those in a little bit. And oh, by the way, I think it's safe to say we have clearly the most thorough coverage of all the providers out there. Now, I get it. Some of you actually don't want that. Your boss may have told you to get this, and that's the only reason you're doing it. And with that in mind, the old cliche is true. You're going to get out of this what you put into it. So if you're coming in not just to get your certification, pass your test, but to really up your skill level, well, then you're certainly going to have that opportunity in this program. The second one is, it could be intuitive. I hope it's intuitive for most of you, but again, not all our candidates kind of have this as a primary goal, but it is for me. It's for 5, 10, 20 years from now, you to say, yeah, great, I did the Yale program, great, I earned my CPWA certification, but wow, did I turn the corner and go to the next level on my technical skills that really helped me serve clients and bring in new clients. And it was significant. That's what I really hope. That's my biggest goal for you in a program like this. And then of course, yes, we want you to be able to not only pass the Yale course, but we want you to be able to pass the CPWA certification exam as well. And I totally get it because I work with you guys on a weekly basis, 52 weeks a year, literally. As you get closer to your exam, it's going to be more about your exam because that's we're all myopic and view to some degree at least. And as we get closer to that, we tend to focus on what's right in front of us, and eventually that will be your exam. All right, flexibility and convenience, as you can imagine, with a program like this, online, fully distance learning, you should have some flexibility here, and you do. You've got a lot. For some of you, that could be a challenge because it's like, well, really, actually, you just need to tell me 7 steps and I need to go do those 7 steps. Well, we actually give you those steps, both at the course level and in test prep, but we do allow you to either follow that or not. So that's where, some people, they get a little bit too much, rope, and then they can do good things or not so good things. But the bottom line is, if you're one that needs more structure, well, we give that to you. You got it. You just plug and play. You just plug yourself in to the recommended learning progression. You just start clicking away. But we're not going to gate each section until we are going to gate one big area I'll talk about, but we're going to not gate all the sections to make sure you're following every single thing. Now, we're going to give you that flexibility. Some of you have been in the business only a few years, 4 or 5, well, actually got to be in at least 5 to begin or do this process. But you could be 3 or 4 years, you could be 23 or 4 years. And so we're cognizant of that. I want you to be able to move fast or slow, depending on what you need. You can download, copy, save, and print everything. Now, it is copyrighted. You can't share that with anybody. You can't publish that to the web or anything like that. As long as we don't see that or think that's happening, we'll continue to allow you to download, copy, save, and print. So bottom line is, you don't really even have to be online to do anything other than, well, download and copy and save, and take our short tests that I'll talk about at the course level. Everything else, literally, you could be offline if you had saved it and were working off your own hard drive or printed copy. All right, here's a big one. Study time expectations. How long is this going to take me, Jim? Because I'm a busy person. I got a busy practice. I got family. I've got, social life. And, I just need to kind of know, as I pencil this in, what am I really looking at? I think 200 hours-ish is probably where you ought to start. And I'll give you some caveats to that in just a second. But as you're looking at and going, okay, well, if I could do 10 hours a week, well, obviously I got 20 weeks of study. So I'm less than 6 months if things go well, and I'm in this range that Jim talks about. And 200 hours is very, very common. I mean, that would be at the center of the bell curve, if you drew a little bell curve, but we do have tails. So we have some students or candidates who come in here and they jump into our program, and literally in less than 100 hours, 40, 50, 60 hours, they're done with everything. They've completed the course requirements, they've studied for the exam, they've taken and passed the exam. Now, usually that's a more experienced advisor. Some people are just super sharp. You know the person that was in your class, and maybe it was you. It wasn't me, but we all knew the people in class. It's like, gosh darn it, John or Sally, I don't even think I ever saw them study, but they always get like the highest test grade. That can happen to some degree here. Now, these professional exams are built to kind of guard against that. But my point is, some people are going to be on the left side of this curve, that's for sure. And some of you that are watching this or on this webinar may be in that boat. So good for you if that's the case. But for others, it could be over 500 hours. So give me a 7-year experienced advisor who's just now really starting to work with high net worths. all they really knew was the Series 7 and the other series exams. They don't even have their CFP. Not that that's a prerequisite. I mean, I would say it's recommended for most of you. We can talk about that if you have questions about that. But that being said, this individual just doesn't have the experience. They haven't studied in detail all the different types of trusts, for example. This is all brand new to them. It's probably most likely going to take them more than 200 hours. But I think, you know, if you're kind of in the middle in terms of experience, and so that's say 10 to 20 years, and you've done your series exams, obviously, but maybe you've done CHFC, certainly if you've done CFP, or you've done some others that are maybe specialized towards retirement or whatever, yeah, then I think 200 hours is probably going to be a pretty good ballpark for you. All right, and again, as I kind of alluded to and even mentioned a couple of these, yeah, your experience, your technical knowledge, your study habits, your test taking skills, etc., really going to be important here as you try to narrow down, well, which side of the 200 hours am I on? I think as you move through the course, and then certainly once you jump into your first couple of weeks in our test prep material, we'll talk about that in a minute, you'll be able to gauge. We've got plenty of ways for you to self-assess. Where are you? And kind of, are you benchmarking beyond that 200 hours or maybe underneath? I did want to mention study habits and focus, and I do that right now for two reasons. One, it's always important because it's distance online learning and you're not in classroom, right? So if I'm teaching you in the class, we're working together, I can see you, you can see me. There's a level of accountability there. But when we're on our own, I'm in a course right now, and well, there's nobody watching me. So I really have to schedule my time out, and I really have to stay committed to that. I mean, it's not like I'm going to hit every one of those study sessions, but I'm going to hit most of them, and I'm going to be really sharp and focused when I am in the moment. So it's really important, and it's even more important with COVID, right? And as COVID kind of starts creeping back now, and not creeping, but really coming back, you're not going to be commuting, or at least many of you are not going to be commuting again. And so you're home and you've got more time, which is great. Maybe that allows you to even consider something like this. But the family's in the next room, or the TV's on in the next room, and it's distracting. You need to figure out a way where you can drown that out. The reason I say that is this is pretty hardcore technical content. Studies show that for there's a variation, but for something like this, I think it's going to take at least 10 to 15 minutes for you to switch gears and fully engage in the content. So you're working with client stuff, or you're doing some reading or returning phone calls, and then you're like, okay, now my next 90 minutes or my next 2 hours, I'm going to study for my CPWA program. It's going to take you a while just to get back in, pick up where you were. And so real nice narrow focus is going to be really important for you in a program like that. So I think a word to the wise should be sufficient there. Bottom line here, you can get through our course requirements, study for and take the exam as soon as you want, basically. I think about 3 weeks is actually the fastest we've ever had anybody blow through all of it and get in there and test. And in most of those cases, actually, it worked out well, but they were exceptional participants. So, I mean, that has to be said. But the bottom line is the study schedule's up to you. You can go fast or slow. For those of you who want to go fast, I don't want to put all these constraints, these guardrails on you. And I don't want the people that are going through slower to slow you up. But on the other side, if you're one of these people that is like, well, it's probably going to take me many hundreds of hours, I don't want the people that are speeding through it, I don't want them to freak you out and panic you and affect you in any way. So that's why we've done this in an asynchronous way, and really short of only a few gates, allowed you to move through at your own pace. All right, let's do one more slide. We'll do structure and details, just some nuts and bolts administratively. And then I'll ask Fiona if we've got any early questions. So now's a good time to just pound those out if you haven't already. So it's $69.95 to really, I believe that's all your certification fees. That is your candidacy fee through IWI and the program fee through Yale. That includes your resources and what have you. We'll talk all about those in just a minute. And that includes one exam attempt. I think it's 200 or 225 or something like that. if you fail it and need to test again. Fortunately, only very, well, I'll talk about the number in a minute, pretty small minority of our candidates or participants need to retest. So, but you just need to keep in mind, if you do fall into that boat, I think it's $225 or something like that for each subsequent attempt. We don't have any discounts for this particular program at this time. IWI is offering scholarships. So for women, minorities, those are not at a national firm or bank with a reimbursement policy. So there's like 4 or 5 criteria that they're offering scholarships for. Those scholarships I've seen run from about $500 on a minimum to $2,000, depending on how many of those boxes you're able to check. So go to the website there. You can even pull it up on your other screen while I'm talking here, and just look for that criteria to see if you might be eligible. If you even think you might be eligible, I think it's worth 10 minutes just to fill out that form. By the way, you'll fill out that form, that scholarship request form or whatever they call it. You'll fill that out first. So you won't apply for candidacy yet. We'll talk about the sequence in a minute. You want to do the scholarship thing first just to see if you're eligible. And then once you get word back on, did you get a scholarship and how much, then you would go into the application process. So that really is your step one if you're interested. Ongoing enrollment, we don't have start and stop dates. When I set this up, and there were no other online programs at the time, this was of course before COVID, now there's company, at least with hybrid programs and whatever. I wanted this to be to where, and Fiona did mention, I was an advisor for a lot of years. And man, everybody's different in terms of the practice and your workload and your scheduling. I wanted this to be where it's a bit more on us as administration and faculty, because we literally have people enrolling in the Yale CPWA and CMA programs just literally almost every single day of the year. So, but that's important because the scheduling needs to be on your schedule, not ours. And I thought that was really important. So that's why we have ongoing enrollment. You just apply for candidacy and start our program whenever you're ready. You have 365 days or a year of access to our program. And then you can pay another, I think it's $2,250. I think it's $2,250 for a second year. Really shouldn't happen to anybody because, as you're going to see, or we've actually even talked about a few slides ago, 200 hours for most of our candidates. Once they begin, they're finishing the whole thing in 6 months or less. So it shouldn't take you a year, but you've got double that just in case, because life happens and what have you, right? That being said, and you'll see it in the program if you choose us and get registered. But even if something happens really unforeseen and you're like, oh man, I only got 2 weeks left, I haven't even started. Well, that almost never happens, but you really just need to finish the course requirements. That's about 40 hours, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then you could just download all the test prep. Again, don't share it with anybody, but the point is running out of time really shouldn't be a problem in this program. You just need to get the course done while you're online in that 365 days. And then you could just download the test prep and study on your own hard drive until you take the test if it came to that. So don't usually see this as an issue, certainly not an issue for most of our participants. Okay, I'll leave it there, but Fiona, let's see if we've got early questions.
Yes, we got a couple of questions. First, can you provide more details regarding exam preparation materials and the practice questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Great one. And you're about, I think it's 2 slides. It may just be one. It's about 2 slides ahead of me. I'm going to break down the course requirements and what that looks like, juxtaposed to the test prep, which I'll tell you, and then we'll go to the next question. We only allow you to get into the test prep once you've passed the course. I want you to get a really strong foundation in the course material before you start micro-focusing on the exam. Oh, don't get me wrong. I want you to micro-focus on the exam, but I don't want you to do that right up front. I want to help you create a really strong foundation. That way, when you get to the test prep, it'll be a smoother, quicker process for you. Good question, though, and I'll fill in some of those details in just a minute.
What should I expect from the Yale prep test versus the actual CPWA exam?
Yeah, and I'll talk about that in just a minute as well, but I'll suffice to say, I'll add a little color to that that I wouldn't normally. we have a number of mock exams baked into the test prep. I'll explain that in a minute. I do try to make sure that most of our questions are more challenging than the CPWA certification exam itself. I think that's one of the reasons we have such a high pass rate. It's because we're not taking it easy on you. Believe me, you don't have to believe or trust me. Once you get into it, you'll see. Well, yeah, he wasn't joking around. Our questions are not layups. They're really getting you to get into the details and into the weeds. That way, when you get to the test and the pressure's on, we all know that most of us, again, maybe that one or two people out of 100, separate. But most of us, when we get in the moment, we get stressed out, a little bit pressured. We don't perform as well as we could. We just don't optimize in that setting, and that's okay. So I'm going to try to make practice harder than the game, if you want to use that analogy. I want to make your practice sessions harder, at least by a little, versus the exam. You're going to have taken multiple exams worth of questions and going through our test prep. Most of you should be pretty tired of questions when you're done with us. That being said, I do want to give you a warning, no matter what program you choose. When we're talking about CPWA, CFP, CFA, FRM, a couple others, it's not just about studying practice questions. You got to get that out of your head. That will not work for these certifications. It worked beautifully for the Series 7 exam and most, not all, but most of the series exams that you and I took through the years, because those were just memory and recall, 80, 90% maybe. These are not that way. You got to think through scenarios. They're throwing stuff at you. You've got to analyze on the spot. You've got to sort through options and make recommendations. So just studying practice questions will not do it. I don't care if nobody does. I think we have more practice questions by far than anybody, but even if somebody gave you 5,000 or 10,000 practice questions, you wouldn't want to just study those. You need to get into the video lectures. You need to get into the readings. You need to go through the summaries and the short videos that I do with you. It's more than just studying practice questions. Okay, I went way long on that question, and we're even going to talk about that more, but that was a good one. What else, Fiona?
Do you have a sample materials recorded lectures we can view prior to enrolling?
Yeah, we really don't. There's a couple of reasons for that. Proprietary issues is one of those things, but if you want to reach out to me individually, I'll be happy to have a call with you. We can kind of talk through that in more detail. I'll lay it out for you in a couple of slides in terms of what the content looks like. It's not rocket science and what have you. Keeping the delivery simple is usually the best way to go. In my experience with a program like this, and having done CFP and CIMA and CPWA and a couple of others for a long time. And the reason I say that is the content is challenging enough. You don't need a complex delivery mechanism to be the right formula. So simple delivery, the material is complex enough. Good question.
If you need additional help with the topic, does your program do that?
Yeah, it does. And we'll talk about administrative help and content help in just a little bit. So teaser there.
Last question, can I stagger the tuition? Do we offer any deals?
Yeah, good question. Now, for this particular program, it's kind of interesting. Some of the certifications work this way. CPWA does, CIMA doesn't, ironically, even though they're both through IWI, Investments in Wealth Institute, that's your certifying body. They manage the enrollment and payment process for CPWA. So you'll want to ask them. They have in the past had the ability to give you guys the ability to split it up over months or whatever. I don't think it's like a year, but so if you need to split up that payment or what have you, go ahead and reach out to them and ask them. You could probably do that when you're kind of checking out the scholarships opportunities on their web page. I'll give you a couple of names. Ashlyn Costley, and Danielle Lynch. Those are two good contacts in the certification department within CPWA over there at IWI. So you want to reach out to them, see if they have any payment plans available right now. Good question. Is that it for now, Fiona?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's roll along here. All right, still in the weeds a little bit, but I do want to talk about the pass rate at least a little bit. You can go to IWI's website. Here's a link. You'll get this copy of this slide deck, or you can just go to their website right now, investmentsinwealth.org, or you could even do IMCA, which what they used to be known .org, and jump onto their website, go to CPWA exam overview, slide down mostly towards the bottom, and you'll see some data on exam pass rates. So our first time pass rate, well, not ours, but our participants, the Yale CPWA candidates, is running right around just under 90%. That's with about 93, 94% of our eligible candidates self-reporting, and then we go verify through IWI's website, kind of a backdoor kind of deal, where you look up certificates. So all that to say, yeah, real high pass rate. The pass rate's been creeping up overall. And if you look on IWI's website right now, they're showing over the last 2 years, all candidates, no matter which program, 81%. Now, if any of you have been following the pass rates over the last 2 or 3 years, which could be none of you, but if you have, you've seen that pass rate creeping up. And I think that's a function. I try to say this as humbly as possible. In the early days, people didn't know Yale had a CPWA program. And so it just takes time for word to get out that, hey, they got a program, it's all online, you move through as fast as you want, and yeah, pass rate's pretty good. And so we've started to get more of a market share, and that is bringing the pass rate up. Now, that being said, there's really no magic. I don't want you to think there's a magic kind of bullet here for our high pass rate. I'm not on the exam committee. Oh, I was, but that was many, many years ago. I even had to be off of the exam, anything having to do with the exam, for 2 years before they even let me test and get certified, which kind of makes sense if you think about it, right? And so none of us that are in this program, faculty or test prep specialists, none of us are on the exam committee. We haven't been writing or reviewing questions. It has to be at least for 2 years, but I can tell you with certainty, that's more like 7 or 8 years for me, and nobody else has even been on that committee. So there's no magic there, but we do have comprehensive material. We have very challenging material, and the people that do put in the time and follow our guidance, yeah, well, there's your magic. I mean, they put in the time, they study the right things, and good things happened. All right, so let's talk about the nuts and bolts, like a couple of you were asking, and I teased you a little bit with partial answers. But let's talk about the 2 parts of the program at Yale. The first part is just the course. Now, CPWA, SEMA, CFP, a few others are unique in their certification structure, if you will, in that they require specific educational content to be covered before you go take their certification exams. And so you have to take a registered education course. Now, all the courses are different. We have to meet certain standards, and we're audited, and they review things and what have you, just like they do the other programs for CPWA. But within our course, I've designed it, or we've designed it, I'll talk about the other faculty in a minute, to take about 40 hours. So it's almost like if you were to come to us in New Haven, sit in our seats, and we were to do a regular weekly class, it's kind of meant to be like that. It would take about 40 hours. And so you've got, it's like 32 or 34 or something hours of lecture from myself, Michael Kitsis, Toby Moskowitz, Skull Zoberman, etc. And it's just like you're there. Now the difference is you can't ask a question right there in the moment because it's on demand. But the good news is you can go back if Michael Kitsis says something really brilliant but really complex, and you're like, if you're like me, it's like, oh, wait, that was awesome, but I need to listen to that last 7 minutes one more time. So that's what you're doing in those 30+ hours in the course level. And then there are tests after each of the 11 content sections that you have to pass. You don't have to pass them in sequence, although I prefer you do, but you do have to pass all 11 of those before we turn you loose on the test prep. You won't even get to see the test prep material till you pass the education course requirements. And again, it's really just those 11 tests. They range from about a dozen to maybe 30 questions each. And you can take them multiple times if you need to. You probably will not pass all of those 11 tests on your first attempt, which is no problem, it's fine. The idea, as I mentioned earlier, is to help you build a foundation, a really solid foundation. That way, when we get into all the minutia of the 551 topics in test prep, you will have seen a lot of that before. Not all of it. We don't have time If I had 400 hours, maybe, but I don't have time in 40 hours to get you through 551 topics in great depth. But I want to get you exposed to what we thought were more important concepts and applications, and maybe even some of the more challenging applications as a setup for your test prep. We've got about 2,400 pages of readings from multiple texts. It's kind of a custom compilation, if you will. That's not a primary source of the program, but it's a great resource for you while you're studying. And then even after, I would expect all of you to download those texts, kind of add them to your online libraries. Really helpful when you're in a lecture or even in test prep and you're like, wow, I just went through those, I reviewed those slides again, or maybe I was looking at some of these practice questions. I just don't get this. I mean, I literally, I've been over it a couple of times now, I don't get it. Okay, now you've got an opportunity to go back into the text for the deeper dive. If you need the 7-page explanation, okay, well then there you've got it. So you're going to use it. It's not supplemental, but it's not primary. It's somewhere in between. But that's a really important, I think, a really important resource, especially on the tax side, because as we all know, wow, I mean, when I first started in the business, major tax reform only came around once every decade, maybe. Oh man, things are changing almost every year now, and some of it significantly. So the texts really help us stay on top of that, and you as well as a practitioner. And I mentioned the section tests. Okay, after you finish the course requirements, you get your Yale Certificate of Completion from School of Management, and then you're eligible to schedule your exam. We send your name to IWI, and then they send you an email that says, okay, great, congratulations, you're now eligible to schedule your exam. Now, you're not ready to go test, you need to do our test prep, but you can go ahead and schedule it. We give you some ideas on when we think you ought to schedule that based on this, this, and this once you get into the program. And then the test prep opens up for you. Now, the test prep, again, meant to be separate from the course, just getting your foundation in the course. Now we're going to turn the corner, and all the rest of the time you spend with us, if it's 200 hours and you already put in 40, you're looking at 160 hours, if that's what it takes, to get you ready for taking and passing that challenging certification exam. So you're really going to be moving now at your own pace once you get to test prep, because some of you are going to have to go really slowly in some areas. We have tax CPAs do this program and earn certification. I think suffice to say they're pretty good in the tax section, and it doesn't take them a whole lot of time to get through that. But maybe they've never managed investments or made investment recommendations before. Most of them have not. That's going to take them a lot more time. But like most of you know, retirement investments, that's kind of your thing. And so maybe it's tax and closely held business that you need to spend more time on. So everybody's going to be a little bit different there. We give you sample schedules. You don't have to follow these. You get a 120-day window from IWI. Once you pass the Yale course, then they send you that email that I mentioned and said, hey, great, you can register for your exam. You have 120 days window without asking for us to open you up a new window for, qualified reasons. So great, we know that. So we're going to give you 1 month, 2 month, 3 month study schedules to kind of start with, and then you can just kind of customize on your own at that point. We recommend most of our participants choose the 60-day or the right down the middle. If you're going to fast track, obviously you're going to go for the 30-day. And even if you say, I need to be more diligent here, I'm going to go for the 3-month, you still got an extra month before that testing window closes. So these have worked out really, really well for most of our participants. All right, so in the test prep, what are you going to see specifically? You're going to get guidance videos from me, so you got to suffer through those, but those are really important because I'm going through the test prep slides. Think of those as summaries of the 551 topics and what we've seen has historically been tested a lot, call that high probability, what just doesn't seem to show up on the exam according to students, and then the fuzzy middle, like it could go either way on you. Hey, this is tested, this area is tested, it's just not tested a whole lot, and so maybe it's a 50-50 chance. That's meant to give you an opportunity to create an inventory of the 551 topics, high, mid, and low probability, and then really focus your attention, especially as you get closer and closer to your exam, on the mid and high probability, and reviewing those summary slides right there, those going back into the readings on a high probability area, like you're like, oh man, I just don't know. good example. Grats are highly tested for a number of reasons probably, but right now they're highly tested. So you're going to see it. It's just a matter of like how many questions and what are they going to test you on. And if you get through our summaries and our practice questions, you're like, oh, yuck. I've never done one and I don't get it. You're going to need to go back into the lecture and watch that part again, and or get into the readings for the real detail, the real deeper dive. So that's kind of your progression. You're going to be doing videos and summary slides, creating an inventory of what's more and less likely to show up on your test. And as you'll see in my guidance in the program itself, you should also be making an inventory of what you feel good about and what you don't. And it's that combination of things that really helps you self-assess as you go through and focus on what you need to be most efficient. And then, yeah, well over 1,000 practice questions. So we used to have a number of mock exams called mock exams, but nobody ever did more than the first or maybe second mock exam. So I've just changed that structure over a year ago and said, we're going to have one official mock exam, and all these other mock exams, which have great questions that you really need to see, I'm going to sprinkle those through the practice questions in the sections themselves. So you're going to do about 5 or 6 mock exams worth of questions, even though only one's going to be called mock exam. So yeah, again, you're going to get plenty of questions in terms of practice, and the combination of those practice questions, the slide summaries, and then going back to the readings and lectures when you need to. That is a wonderful combination for getting through this process. All right, let's talk calculator, and then maybe one more slide, and then we'll take questions as we kind of get towards the top of the hour. I think we've got about 12 more minutes or something like that. Just a brief note on calculator policy. I'm not going to read it to you. This comes right out of the CPWA candidate handbook. These are the calculators that are allowed. If you don't have a calculator, I've highlighted a couple that are the most popular amongst our participants. I have a 12C, an HP 12C, and you may have heard of that one. You hear about that one in the industry. That's not as popular as it used to be because we have computers now. That one can do a ton, but the learning curve is really crazy. So I would not do the HP 12C unless you're just a real computer, math geek like I used to be, and are willing to spend the time to learn how to do that. Because that's the keystrokes are even different. So anyway, I think these other couple are the way to go. Go to tvmcalcs.com if you're not comfortable with the financial calculator or you're new to it. Spend about an hour going through the sample exercises by keystroke for each of about a dozen of the most popular financial calculators out there. Just pick yours and then do the 12 examples, and then you should be in good shape. Just a quick note, you're probably only going to have about a handful of questions on this particular exam where, like, if you don't have a financial calculator, you're just going to have to randomly guess, because even if you knew how to do it mathematically, it would take you way too long. So out of 135 questions, only 5, probably no more than that. Okay, so this is an issue, but it's not a huge issue. All right, where's my help? So this is what one of you was asking as well. So a couple things, just kind of before I talk about specifically where it is. Having dealt with thousands of CPWA candidates now, literally over the years, I kind of know where many of you, not all, but many of you are going to kind of get tripped up on the content and in getting ready for the test in certain areas. So got lots of little helpful hints. I put notes on the slides and in the lectures and all that kind of stuff. You probably get tired of them after a while. In your readings, I'm going to have notes in your readings, that kind of thing. Just trying to help you get ahead of that. That's going to head off some of those questions. A lot of best practices pointers for your first 3 to 4 months. I'm posting to your specific iteration of the LMS about once a week with just best practices, tips, do's, and do this, don't do that, those kinds of things. If you have an administrative or logistical question, Jim, I can't remember how long I've got. I mean, I know I got 360 days, but I've just lost 365 days. I've lost track of how much time I have left. I forgot my login information, or what's the URL for Yale Canvas, all that stuff. So from 8 to 5, we have people on staff at Yale and Dobbs Education for this program to answer those questions, 8 to 5 Eastern, Monday through Friday. Canvas has technical support 24/7, phone, email, and chat. So you always, if it's like, well, my videos looked fine yesterday, but for some reason they're not. It's probably your browser. It's probably you're logging in now through a a business computer instead of a personal device. Canvas is there for you 24/7. So you always got help in those areas. Discussion board is lively. It's getting more lively, which is great, which we encourage. Study groups form through that. We don't share your information with other people, but if you want to say, hey, Tuesday nights are great for me. Anybody want to jump on and let's have some accountability here and do study sessions, you can do that through the discussion board. And the discussion board also acts like an FAQ. So for the content questions that are like really common, we leave those up or we take those from emails with students' permission and the participants' permission and put those in the discussion board so you can just see, well, I'm struggling between CRTs and CLTs and some of the mechanics of those. And so you're going to see a nice discussion board there kind of going through some of those technical issues. And then last but not least, but it is important, if you're ever confused on your study plan, the timing, am I studying the right things? There's so many resources. I think I'm doing the right things and doing the right progression, but I'm not sure. You want to reach out to me immediately. And then we'll have a phone call. Usually it takes 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes to just kind of hammer that out. Make sure you know exactly what you need to be doing either at the course level or the test prep area. And then content help if you need it. This program is meant to be self-study. It's not priced like a traditional academic credit or degree program, as I'm sure you know. And so there's only so much access we can give you to program faculty. We do have 2 great faculty members right now, Ross Richardson, Trudy Turner, who are available for when you have content questions. You get about a dozen lifelines. So just think of it, you got about 12. If you need to reach out on GRATs or CUPERTs or IELTS or whatever, then you can reach out to Ross and Trudy through email because we want it to be in writing. You may end up doing a little bit of follow-up with them on the phone, but we want the bulk of it to be in writing so you can put that in your study notes. That way, 3 weeks or 3 months later, when you're doing your final cramming, you've got a written record of how they helped you get through whatever you were missing before. So you've got those in your back pocket and you just save them until you hit something. It's like, oh, this is really important. Jim said it's highly tested. And I just don't quite understand this. Absolutely, you take an opportunity to reach out to Ross or Trudy and get some help there. And again, study plans and big picture strategy, you just reach out to me. We can usually knock that out in a pretty short phone call. All right, great faculty. I think you probably know some of these names. I've been working with Toby for, it's got to be at least 15 years now on a number of different programs. And he was at Chicago booth and I was doing work with Chicago booth before we both came over to Yale at about almost the same time. He is wonderful. I wanted him to be the lead over here at Yale and he's fabulous. You'll love him. He obviously does, as you can imagine, most of the investments work. Michael Kitsis is awesome. Tax, retirement, even does some asset protection work in this program. John Nersessian kind of helps you with some of the retirement and distributions, sequence of returns, distribution, and income strategies, those kind of things. He also does executive compensation in this program. Richard Joyner was actually who I would call the founder of CPWA. Yeah, they brought me in to turn it into a certification about 12 years ago or something. But it was his original idea to create a certificate for advisors working with a high net worth. That was more like 20 years ago. So we got him to come back into the Yale studio and record the tax sessions. There's nobody better than Richard to take something really complex and make it to where we can all understand it, not only for our practice in working with our clients and their attorneys and CPAs, but to get through the exam as well. And again, just a note down there that none of us have been on the exam committee for a number of years. And again, it's probably 7 because none of these guys have been on the exam committee. I think I'm the only one, and that was many, many years ago. Okay. I'm not going to go through this. You can read this, and we've got more of this on the website as well. We've got about 5 minutes left, so we're in good shape. But yeah, look, this is challenging content. This is a challenging exam. There's no guarantee you will make it. I think there's a really strong probability you will if you put in the time and follow our guidance. But we're shooting for high scores. Our NPS or Net Promoter Score is 73. So if you don't know what that is, just go over your other screen right now and Google Net Promoter Score. You all know what it is inherently because your firms are using it. You just may not know what it is, and then look up what a 73 is. Then we've got all kinds of testimonials on the website as well. All right, so all that was just designed to help you answer these questions. How important is flexibility to you? If maximum flexibility or a lot of it is important, I think we're probably your best option. Customizing your learning plan. I think this is something that we really take seriously and really offer you the opportunity to focus. Look, you're going to need to use all of those tools, the lecture videos, the test prep videos, the summary slides, the practice questions, the readings. You're going to need to use all of them, but some of you are going to lean more heavily to these couple. Some of you are going to lean more heavily to these over there, and you can do that. Use them all, but you're going to use them based on your preferences, and we've designed it to allow you to do that. You certainly have comprehensive coverage of all of the content, as I just mentioned. Motivation, self-discipline, you're going to need to have that, right? If you are a learner that's like, that all sounds great, Jim, but I really work best when I'm under pressure and I'm sitting in the classroom and I have to listen, otherwise I'll be called out. And that's maybe the only way I can get through all of this. Well, if that's the case, then you need to go to a live in-person class, because I'm going to be hitting you with messages. Kevin's going to be hitting you with messages through email, me through the platform, but we can't reach through the camera and make sure you're doing what you need to do. So you do need to have that kind of self-discipline to be successful in a program. So, and now's the time to ask that very candid question of yourself. Do I have enough motivation to pull that off? Are you ready for a challenge? If you are, and answer yes to really all of those others, then I say come join me at Yale. I love it here. And I think you will too. Of course, you'll love having your Yale certificate hanging on your wall and in your LinkedIn bio and in your Vita and your professional bio and all that good stuff. But I think, just being part of the Yale family is really neat. I didn't do any of my graduate degrees or undergraduate at Yale, UCLA, Carnegie Mellon, and it's just great being at Yale. So if you're up for the challenge, certainly welcome you to join us. When you're ready, here's what you'll do. And then we've got a couple more minutes. We'll just take questions, fill out the rest of the time. You can go through our website or IWI's. If you go through the link on our website there, it's just going to take you to the IWI, because remember I said IWI, your certifying body, they handle the registrations and enrollment and payment. So it's just, you can go through ours, but it's just going to take you over to their site. And then there's Fiona and my contact information if you have any more questions on Yale School of Management, Exec Ed programs. Fiona is your go-to person, and then me for, say, CIMA and CPWA certification in these programs. Okay, so that's it from me. I'll stop rambling. Fiona, let's see what kind of questions we've got.
Yes. Can we claim Yale on our resume or bios?
Yeah, absolutely. As long as you do it properly. So you're not a student at Yale, you were a student, and really we prefer participant in the Yale CPWA Certified Education Program. And there's 3 or 4 variations of that, but yeah, that's what you're going to put in your LinkedIn. So like university, education, what schooling you're going to go Yale School of Management, but you're going to put in the specific program that you went through. And that really goes through to pretty much all the Yale, at least non-degree programs. As long as you identify what you did at Yale, you can use the Yale name. So just use it properly and you're good to go.
I have a CIMA. Does CPWA count for continuing education credit?
It does, vice versa. So if you got your CIMA or your CFP, for example, CPWA is going to fill up the CE bucket for CIMA all 40 hours. Cool, right? Because it's 40 hours every 2 years. For CFP, it's 30 hours. 2 of those have to be ethics and in CFP board ethics code. So if you do CPWA and you got your CFP, it's going to count for 28 of those 30 hours that you have to get every other year, because the CPWA ethics is not a true match to CFP board ethics. But that's pretty cool. So you do this program and yeah, you're going to be able to knock out CE for other designations. Yeah.
Okay, last question. What is the minimum score to pass a section exam?
Yeah, good question. So there's a couple of things. One, to pass the tests in our course, you got to get an 80% or higher. Again, you can take them as many times as you need to. Eventually, it just kind of becomes to be a chore. So you just want to pay attention to those lectures and you can pass them faster. But 80% is what we require. And then we have a kind of a bar of 80% on all of our test prep. None of that's required, of course. You're just doing it voluntarily to get ready for the exam. But we want to set that bar pretty high. And our questions are pretty tough, at least in the test prep area for sure. On the exam itself, which is what I mentioned, what I suspect you were actually asking about, it's modified Ingolf, so that's a sliding scale. They can move that up and down for a number of different reasons. CFP board uses that. I fully suspect CFA Institute uses that. We're seeing the pass score for CPWA, not the rate, but the pass score be right around 70, probably 76, 77%. You're going to need to get of 135 questions, 125 are scored. There are 10 beta non-scored items they're just trying out. But you're going to need to get probably 76 to 77% of the 125. So that's right around 96 questions of the 125 correct to pass. So we're going to set that bar a little higher in the test prep. Great question, though.
That's it. Thank you, Jim.
You bet. Thanks, everybody. And if you have any questions, again, don't hesitate to reach out to me by phone or email. Happy to continue this conversation. Fiona, back to you.
Thank you all for joining us this afternoon and for submitting so many thoughtful questions. We really appreciate that. For more information, you can visit our website or reach out to us directly with any additional questions. This webinar, including the video recording and the slides, will be shared in the coming days. So while we hope to see you in our program, we truly wish that you find a program and path that's the best fit for you. So thank you again for sharing your time with us. This concludes the webinar.